Good morning and welcome back to the Football Digest podcast. Delighted you're back and joining us this week. And there's so much to chew over and so much to look back upon over the last week or so, not least last night's absolute cracker at Anfield. Liverpool, Tottenham, perhaps the most significant game in the title race so far. What do we learn? What can we take from that? What do we take forward for the rest of the season? So much obviously going on this past week. Be interesting to see also get some views on concussion substitutes, the mess at Arsenal. So I'm delighted that colleagues join me from the great and the good. Andy Dunn, my colleague, chief sports writer of the Daily Mirror. Jeremy Cross, chief sports writer of the Daily Star. And Matt Dunn, football aficionado from the Daily Express. Thanks so much for joining, guys. Really nice to see you all. I guess there's only one place to start, isn't there, really, and kind of chew over the he said, she said, the recriminations, the accusations, the last gasp drama, and everything that was at Anfield last night. Andy, we were both there, weren't we? And what a terrific contest that was, really. I thought it was fascinating. And I tell you what, if the Premier League thrives on big personalities and big characters in title races, and we love sort of big personalities, then the kind of the Klopp Mourinho showdown is back in full effect this season, isn't it, really?
It was brilliant, wasn't it? I mean, I don't know if you noticed, John, we were sat at opposite ends of the stands, myself and you, but I don't know if you noticed the way they embraced so warmly at the start of the game. It was like they were in their own Christmas bubble. They were absolutely delighted to see each other, and then that soon disappeared. And in the end, we had Mourinho making that barb, that if I behaved on the touchline like Klopp, there'd be trouble. And he's got a point, by the way. So, I mean, that's another subject. I do think that Klopp and Pep Guardiola get away with murder on the touchline, their antics, but that might be another subject. But it was fascinating.
No, make it a subject, please do.
I'll quickly make it a subject. I think that the Klopp's sarcastic applause of the fourth official the other day was absolutely disgraceful. I think Pep's berating of the fourth official for having the temerity to hold up a board that said 4 minutes of added time was disgraceful. I go back to when I was at a game, Cardiff, Man City in the FA Cup, and it was a terrible tackle, and I can't remember for the life of me the Cardiff player's name. It will come to me. On Leroy Sané, anyway. And it was a terrible tackle, true. But at the end of the game, Pep Guardiola went onto the pitch and was, finger pointing at the referee, jabbing in his face, etc., etc. Klopp has done the same. He did the same to David Coote this year, and that almost encouraged Andy Robertson to do the same. Guardiola and Klopp get away with absolutely. I just think it's scandalous with what they get away with, marching onto the pitch, remonstrating with referees, their touchline antics, and Jose's got a point. Having said that,
does Jose get done, Andy? If Jose does the same, does Jose get done? Is it absolutely? That's what Jose said last night, wasn't it?
If Jose sarcastically applauds a fourth official, as Klopp did in the game at Brighton, with the late penalty, yes, he gets done. Absolutely, Klopp and Guardiola are basically. I mean, I always sort of shy against this theory that big name managers, certain managers are indulged. But Pep Guardiola and Jurgen Klopp are indulged. It's as simple as that. So he's got a point, yes. So, we are now, if you want to carry on with this conversation, fine. I'll get on to the game.
No, let's go back to the game. Let's go back to the game. What it means.
Back to the game.
It was a good digression.
And actually, talking of the characters involved in the game, you spoke about Mourinho and Klopp. It's fascinating because I drove home last night and I woke up this morning, I'm thinking about the game, and your initial instinct last night when you hear the press conference via Zoom, Mourinho says, well, the best team lost, and we would have even been disappointed with a point. You're thinking, was I watching the same game? Liverpool by far the better team. But then you think about the game, you watch the game again when you get home on Match of the Day, what you've put on, what you've recorded, and you look at it again this morning and you think, well, you know what? Maybe he's got a point. Maybe Mourinho does have a point, because it was one of those unbelievably fascinating games where Liverpool had most of possession, which we always knew they were going to have. They looked the better team. They were the more adventurous team. They were the more attacking team. But then you look at the chances, and they were Tottenham's. I mean, to me, John, I think in that second half, it was an even game, and in the second half, had Bergwijn or Kane taken any of those chances, you would not have backed against him. And also, I never ever saw that Liverpool winner coming. So it's one of those games which I think was brilliant because it leaves you sort of wondering, actually, who's right? Yeah. Is Jose being as ridiculous as he first sounded, or actually does he have a point?
I don't know. It's difficult one to work out there, and I guess we all fell somewhat into the Tim Sherwood trap. We didn't see it coming, did we? Which I have to say, if you haven't seen that, by the way, it's just a classic moment of TV. No one's going to score here. Whoop! Yes, there it is. Jeremy, what did you make of it? What did you take out from the game?
Well, the overriding feeling was obviously it was a huge win for Liverpool, who they've been stripped of so many key players this season through injuries. And, you look at the table this morning and the 3 points clear at the top of the table. So, for all Klopp's moaning about injuries and things, I don't get it with him sometimes. Look, he's brought so much to the English game. He's created a wonderful team who are arguably the best team in the world. I just wish he'd stop moaning as much. It's just, it's the same for every. All right, they've probably had maybe a few more injuries than others, but he's got a huge squad to contend with. And I think just going back to what Dunny said about the two managers, it's great to see them falling out, and backbiting and bickering, because we've not had that really since maybe Fergie and Wenger, really, I suppose. So this could be the start of a genuine rivalry in terms of, challenging for trophies between these two teams. And there's a lot of passion in those guys. You want to see that on the touchline. I agree with Andy as well, and the fact that Klopp does overset the mark a lot. So I was with Mourinho last night, actually. I thought Tottenham weren't the better team, but they had the best chances, and they only had 26% possession last night, and they created some really gilt-edged chances to win the game. Obviously, Kane missed the header late on, and Bergwijn missed two great chances. So, maybe a draw would have been a fair result, but it's a statement from Liverpool because Tottenham have probably been the best team of the season so far. And, they've won with so many key players missing. There they are again at the top of the table. It all looks familiar now, and I know there's still a long way to go, but it's difficult to see beyond Liverpool.
Yeah, I tell you what, it's interesting, isn't it? Bergwijn always seems to get selected for Tottenham's big games, doesn't he, Dunny? I mean, it's amazing, really. And yet he, last night, I mean, the first one was sloppy when he dragged it across the face of the goal, and then hitting the post, Matt, he's just, he's got to score that. And then Harry Kane, of all people, missing that header. It's astonishing. So there were great chances for Spurs.
They were great chances. To be fair to Kane, he finally got a full glimpse of the ball very late, but still, you'd expect him to put that one away. I tell you what, Spurs fans would have much rather had Heung-min Son run through on those two Bergwijn chances, because the chance he got, I mean, I don't think people talk enough about his finishing ability, Son. But whenever you see him run through on goal, you just know it's going to end up in the back of the net. He's an incredible player. And Bergwijn was arguably a little bit unlucky with the second one. The first one he didn't really get a proper go at. I tell you what, my takeout from last night's game was that is the title race this season. When you compare last night's game to a tepid Manchester derby and even Liverpool Man City a month or so ago, that this is the race that matters this season, it seems. And with Mourinho winding Klopp up like nobody's business and Klopp responding to it, I just hope that Spurs can stay near enough to them for the remaining months of the season to make this a fascinating title race.
Was that Jose of old, Matt?
Oh, of course it was.
On Tuesday, pre-match.
Tuesday, yeah, what with the injuries, the
days, the amount of days.
It's been the Jose of old for most of the season, since he rediscovered Instagram, since... Yeah, he's just been, Jose is one of the most engaging characters. I mean, it's been a privilege. I've done Chelsea trips where, as you know, on trips, you get to know these people a lot better than you do just across a press conference. And he's such an engaging individual when he's on form. And we're seeing some of that. I'll tell you what, do you know what I think the turning point was? How well he was perceived on that Amazon Prime video. Everyone was telling him he's got his mojo back. He felt that, and he must have grown about a foot since then. And he's loving it again. And instead of being the miserable, sour-faced curmudgeon league figures shouting and berating at everybody. He's back on his tricks. He's winding up, pulling other people into it. And it's just brilliant because the game needs a bit of that just to keep, the odd day we've got between games, to keep them lively.
I think he was beaten down at Man United, wasn't he? By the time he'd left Man United, he just looked a bit broken, to be honest, because that was the one job he always really wanted in his career, and he finally got it, and it just didn't pan out like he wanted to. So, but he had a break, didn't he, and came back in at Tottenham, and we all, I for one wrote him off. In the last year or so, he was written off by loads of people in terms of as the game left him behind, but he's proved us wrong, I think, so far.
Yeah, he has. Andy, I can see you shaking your head there, pal, in absolute disbelief and disagreement. Tell us.
Well, no. Listen, I do believe that's the Jose of old, counting the days that Jurgen Klopp has had in charge of Liverpool compared to his, and going through the injuries. Great stuff. I mean, typical stuff. I do think probably Harry Kane missed that header from the corner because he actually probably thought he was defending a corner like he normally is, which seems to be one of his roles now in this team. I do wonder, the 26%, 27%, 25%, whatever you want to call it, which could almost be Jose Mourinho's surname, couldn't it now? Like we all would have said it was a masterclass if he'd have won, like we said, it was a masterclass against Man City, which of course it wasn't. City missed chances, and had they not missed chances, it would have been no such thing as a masterclass. We're buying into this at the moment. We're buying into a team that are essentially negative. You know what I wonder? I wonder how long Harry Kane will put up with this for. I wonder if Harry.
No, Andy, Matt, you jump in, because Paul Merson said the most crazy, ridiculous thing earlier in the season. He's never going to score goals or succeed under.
No, he'll score goals.
And embarrassing Paul Merson by the week.
No, listen. He will score goals. Harry Kane will score goals because that they'll break on the counter attack. Son will play him in. He'll score goals. But you know what? If I'm Harry Kane and I'm playing against teams like Liverpool and I'm watching the chances they create, the amount of possession they have, if I'm watching teams like Manchester City, okay, you beat them, but they're having 70% of possession. You're getting chances. I'm thinking, you know what? If I'm a footballer, I'd quite like the ball. I wouldn't like to be.
Well, Harry gets in both penalty areas.
No. Sorry.
Harry gets in both penalty areas.
Listen, he's a world-class striker who deserves to be playing in a team, such as Liverpool, such as Manchester City, such as, a Barcelona or a Bayern Munich, or someone who actually wants to football and wants to attack. Watching Harry Kane
Andy, we have to stop there. Hey, football. Can I just come back at you at wants to attack? Now, I don't think any of us really get a grip on what this XG thing is. But as far as I can get, it's the amount of good chances and good shots that you've got and the probability that you're going to score goals. On last night's game, Liverpool, if all things being equal, created the chances and generated the shots that created 0.96 of a goal. Spurs, with a third of the possession, should have scored 1.16 goals. Yeah. They actually had better chances. Okay. It's the boffins that do this sort of thing, which teams use to measure players.
Matt,
it's an established thing in football. It's not just a gimmick. They say Matt, were more attacking.
Hang on, it's not just a gimmick. Well, call me old-fashioned, but I prefer to be at a game in the flesh watching a football match. You may prefer, some online... whatever. That's where I prefer to be. I watched the game for 90 minutes. I know what happened in the game. I don't need someone saying XG to me about what happened in the game. I saw who were the better team. I saw who had the attacking intent. I saw who had the adventure. I saw who had most of possession, and the best team won. And that's it. I mean, don't try and tell me that XG makes any difference to the game. Try being at a game, watching the game, and making a judgment on the game rather than going online to get XG. What's that all about?
But it is a judgment, Andy. I mean, what does possession buy?
No, a judgment is what you see in a game when you're there at a game.
I know, and that's why they've tried to take the judgment out and make it objective by making a measure. Because what is possession if you don't do anything with it? The Champions League for a number of years.
The best explanation I've heard of XG is when basically is how reliable. And I must say, I don't want to sound like an old fuddy-duddy on this one. But the best explanation, I'm with Andy really largely, it is that basically how many times that because I think it makes no sense really in reality in terms of the actual team output, if you like, because time and again that they will let you down because that's the inconsistency and why we like football. But I think the XG is the best explanation I can put is when Heung-min Son goes through on goal, we expect him to score 9 times out of 10, as Matt rightly said. And I think when Bergwijn goes through, clearly now we probably expect him to score 3 times out of 10, basically. And I think that's the best explanation of XG. And yet you apply it clearly in a team format. But I just think that I'm sorry, listen, I don't buy into it as the format, as a decider of games. What decides games is the clinical nature of finishing, which Liverpool do with such style, why they are champions and why they won last night.
John, how are Liverpool more attacking when you take 31 passes, say, to get a shot on goal, when Spurs can do it in 4?
Andy, do you think Tottenham are boring to watch? Is that what you're saying? Andy?
Yes. Absolutely. I saw them. I mean, I've never seen a more boring performance than Tottenham's at Chelsea. Now, listen, I admire it for what he's doing. Like, it is absolutely quintessential Jose. You know, when he got to the Champions League and won the Champions League with Inter, it was like, you know, it's the stuff that he dreams of having. You know, I mean, if he could have 5% possession win a game, you know, it would be his ultimate, scenario, wouldn't it?
What would you rather do? Would you rather watch your team be boring and win more games than they lose, or would you rather them be exciting and not necessarily win all the time?
I'd rather than be excited and not win all the time.
Would you?
Oh, absolutely. Who wants to watch a boring team? What do you pay money for to watch a boring team?
Some of the goals Tottenham score on the break are fantastic goals to watch.
Oh, lovely. Yes. I
mean, Leeds hit teams on the break like...
but who plays...
I mean, obviously they thrashed Newcastle last night. I don't know if you saw the highlights, but... They ripped Newcastle apart in the last 15 minutes with the piling bodies forward.
Yes.
The difference, and Bielsa gets so much credit for that style of play. Now, maybe they are a bit more exciting to watch than Tottenham, but the difference between Leeds and Tottenham is Tottenham can defend too, Leeds can't.
Yeah, but I'm guessing, Jez, I'm guessing, and I don't know, but we'll look it up. But last time I looked, Leeds had 70% of possession against Newcastle last night. In the first half hour, I looked at the stats, and I think Leeds had 15 shots and 70% of possession. I want to see my team with the ball. I want to see. That's what you go and watch football for. That's why it's called.
There's got to be.
It's not defending it and get away when you can. I mean, John, you were at the game last night. I mean, never mind, XG, amount of passes in this era, or whatever. Who were the better team last night?
I thought Liverpool were the better.
Absolutely,
I break it down. I thought Liverpool were the better team. I thought the individual performances were better. I thought Robertson again was just fantastic. Curtis Jones, Reece Williams, what a story there, by the way. 2 of the front 3 score. Henderson just drives, doesn't he? And all round, I think
Curtis Jones outstanding.
Son, I thought, was terrific for Spurs, by the way.
He was. He tracked back well. He defended well. He had one chance. He got forward. I mean, and that's what he's doing. I mean, you know what?
I'm saying that to illustrate the point, though, Danny. Do you know what I mean? There were more better performers from Liverpool, and yet I do have to say, you break down the game. There's no doubt about it. Tottenham have the better chances, as we said before. And that is the way that they set up. They sit deep. They were definitely sitting deep in that first half, weren't they? And playing on the counter.
Yes.
And that's what that's what
I'll quickly go back to the game at Stamford Bridge a couple of weeks ago that I was at, Chelsea Spurs, the entirely forgettable 0-0. And with 10 minutes to go, it's 0-0, and it could be either sides to win. And Jose gets 2 of his subs, 2 Welshmen to warm up. So who's he going to bring on at 0-0 against Chelsea? Is he going to bring on Gareth Bale, the man with a game-changing moment in his locker? Or is he going to bring on his compatriot, the sort of sturdy fullback Ben Davies? We know what happens. He brings on the fullback. Now, to me, football's about more than that. Football's not about closing up shop to get a point from Stamford Bridge with 10 minutes left. when you've got Gareth Bale to bring on. For goodness sake, but then that's him being clever. That's him being Jose. That's him being negative. That's him being, what he is. Now, as I say, if you are, as the lads seem to think, if you are happy to watch your team play functional, defensive, counter-attacking football and nick the odd win here or there and maybe contend, because they won't win the title, will they, clearly? Then
I don't know. I'm with Matt on this, but I think it'll be a tighter title race, and I think it will be an interesting one. I do think it brings... listen, because of where I live, I know an awful lot of Spurs fans, right? And then basically, Spurs fans were not having Jose Mourinho, even up until early part of this season. They're still not absolutely in love with him in the way that they were with Pochettino, in my experience. But I think they've come round to it. I think they're saying that basically, okay, we'll have this. If it means we finally win the title or we win a trophy at last, I think this is worth doing. Jezza, is it, how do you see it? Do Spurs fans have to buy into this? Do they buy into the Jose show to get themselves some silverware?
They don't have any choice, do they? Because he's their manager, and you've got to get on with it. And has he improved that team? Yes, of course he has. We all know that. There's clear evidence of that. They were in a bit of a state, weren't they, when before Pochettino ended up getting the sack? So, look, the amount of trophies Tottenham fans have seen their club win over the last 2 decades is pitiful, really, isn't it, for such a big club? So, if he can win them something, whether it's an FA Cup, I'm not convinced they'll win the title, but. If they can win something under Mourinho, that's got to be a positive, surely. Look, and I get what Dunny's saying. We all go to sport, not just football, any sport, to be entertained. You want to see great football. But ultimately, you want to see your team win something. And if that method Mourinho has as a manager has worked countless times down the years. So if he can do that again at Tottenham, he'll be a hero to the fans.
Yeah. Matt, I guess I lost count of the times we used to go to Pochettino press conferences and said, what about the trophies, Maurizio? And basically now, you can't have it both ways, is what I'm trying to say, really.
No, I mean, Jose is a winner. He was brought in to be a winner.
We can have it both ways at Liverpool, to be fair.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I'm looking forward to get Andy a copy of 101 Great Passes for Andy for Christmas, I think, because he seems to enjoy his possession football so much. But yeah, I mean, he's here to get results, and that's what he's doing with his football. He's not seeing, his players aren't seeing much of the ball, but when they've got it, they are as dynamic a team that the Premier League's seen going forward. To have so little of the ball and score so many goals, it's a remarkable achievement. And
I'm not
playing this,
but that's not right. I mean,
There's
a counter-attacking team. There's a dynamic team. Liverpool with a dynamic team, and Tottenham with a counter-attack.
Well, where are they going with this dynamism? It's sideways mainly, because 76%
of Liverpool sideways.
Oh, please.
76% of possession and not scoring out and one away win all season. That's hardly great football, is it?
What does possession matter these days? Who cares?
That's what I'm trying to say.
Possession?
Well,
who cares about that?
76%.
I want to see.
It's just a shame the fans weren't there to celebrate and raise a pint. 76% possession.
Listen,
no, it's not that. Your possession, I think, represents how well you play, how well you keep the ball, how you find passes. I want to see open, expansive football. I don't want to see anti-football with counter-attacking. When you have the ball, we'll sit deep, we'll soak you up. I'm sorry, no. I don't like that. I really
possession
don't like
football like West Germany or Austria in 1982. Possession football in that game was remarkable.
38 years ago, Danny.
Yeah, I know, but that's possession football for you. That's two teams just wanting to keep the ball and not do anything with it. You've got to do something with the ball. Otherwise, what's the point? You can knock it.
Or Liverpool generally do. They broke all the records before them and swept all before them at the same time.
But this season they haven't been.
And Matt, the season's 13 games old. Who have won the title for the last 3 seasons? Manchester City and Liverpool. Who have dominated by far in the last 3 seasons? Manchester City and Liverpool. And what is their game based on? Possession, by the way. Their game is based on having the football. Huh?
And the year before that, Leicester City. How was their game built? Counter-attacking football, speedy counter-attack with Vardy.
I'm about the last 3 years.
But then 4 years ago, you're just taking an example that suits your argument. Throughout the history of football.
No, I'm taking 3 years as opposed to one. I'm taking the norm rather than the anomaly.
There's not a lot of Christmas spirit in this group today.
Yeah, I know. But
Matt
should tell people that we have got the Christmas
party.
We'll
go separate tables.
It's a good job it's on Zoom. Otherwise, it could have come to blows if we'd all been in the same room.
I move on.
I have to say that for me, guys, this discussion is brilliant because it shows just what an entertaining, enthralling game last night was. Yeah. You know, it divides opinion, and I have to say, I do think it will be a tight race between these two. One team that I think we begin to question whether they will still be in the title race after the week that they've had is Andy Dunn's favourite, Chelsea, and Frank Lampard.
Frank out.
Andy, it's not been a good week for Frank, has it?
No, it's not been a good week for him. No, but it's pretty much par for the course. You know, since he took over, he's been in charge for 51 games now. I think 51 Premier League games. And other games in addition to that, and his record is just okay, and that's what I expect. His record is, points per game. It's probably about, I think, 1.7, say, compared to Maurizio Sarri's 1.8. They concede a lot more goals. His win percentage is 50% compared to Sarri's 55%. They spent a lot of money in the transfer window. It's he is absolutely a work in progress. And I can't call how it's going to work out. They should be doing better in these last two results. They've had some good results this season, but I am still. Again, I'll repeat myself, as much as I like Lampard and think hope that he will make a very good manager. And yes, at the moment,
Frank actually done it, not Lampard.
I was talking Frank, sorry, and Frank Lampard's Chelsea. To give them the full title. They were never Maurizio Sarri's Chelsea, but they are Frank Lampard's Chelsea. And yes, they're okay. I wouldn't. This does not surprise me. This blip. I remember being at, strange enough, this week, very timely, at West Brom here in the season when they went 3 goals down, didn't they, I think, in the first half. And I saw the vulnerabilities there, and the vulnerabilities are still there defensively. Listen, what else to say? He's got an awful lot to prove as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, it's interesting that. Yeah, Jeremy, how do you see it? I must say, both games they were there almost for Chelsea, and it was their own failings, I guess. I watched them both, and it was their own failings that let them down. You could say that about any defeat, of course you could, but they're in both games, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, look, at that level, it's such fine margins, isn't it? Giroud's missed a couple of good chances. He's been in great form recently, so on another day they would have gone in, they would have won. They got done against Wolves to an outstanding winner at the end, which sort of showed up Zuma's naivety in a lot of ways in terms of him closing him down. But look, it's fascinating to see Lampard. He's such a young manager. We forget how young he is, really, and how inexperienced he is. You just presume because he manages Chelsea that he's got this body of work behind him, but it's not that long ago that he actually retired as a player. So for someone of that inexperience to have such a big and demanding role at such a huge club, which is just, success has to be part of their DNA. You've got to give him time. He's still tweaking things. He's obviously signed a lot of players in the summer, spent a lot of money. That brings with it, obviously, a lot of pressure and expectation. But they're up there, aren't they? They're in the top 4 or 5. They're in the mix, It's such a fluctuating season that everyone's beating everyone else and you just don't know what's going to happen. So, look, will they win the title? Probably not. But, they're competing at the top end. And, I think that's in his second season. I think that's all you can ask for at the minute. I just hope, that Abramovich gives him enough time to try and really win something significant.
Yeah, it is an interesting case point. Matt, I'm going to move on to Arsenal because you were at Arsenal last night. How long we got? I better just check me what to do the Arsenal inquest. So I'm kind of, I'll set this one up for you. So I'm reading some reports ridiculing this morning Arsenal's celebratory attitude towards a point against Southampton at home. having spent the last 3 months being overwhelmed by pieces about how wonderful Southampton were. So I'm struggling really to evaluate both, but I'm also not pretending at all that Arsenal were in all sorts of problems at all. How did you see last night, Matt, first and foremost, as a game, quite apart from the shambles that has been Arsenal this season in the last couple of months?
As a game, Southampton came and brought everything that we knew that Southampton were going to bring to the game. From Ward-Prowse's set-piece play to his general spreading of the game, some fantastic passes that Andy would have loved, and a really keen, high-press, high-energy game, which Arsenal really struggled to cope with 11 versus 11 before we got into the trouble. Arsenal very much in their shell in the first half. It wasn't a strong Arsenal. It wasn't a response. It wasn't anything. It wasn't anything that they needed to be. The clock went over 13 hours for a goal from open play from them, and it looked like it could have gone on and on and on. And the way I sort of structured my match report is it suddenly made me realise just how much work Arteta's got to do at the club, because he sorted out Aubameyang, got him scoring again, ended this run without scoring from open play, and yet he's still got to deal with the disciplinary problems, and he's still got to deal with the fact that his defenders can't defend. He's basically done half the job in one afternoon, and it's not enough. It's a mess there at the moment. The discipline. Gabriel it was a silly kick the ball away, guaranteed yellow card, which he didn't need to do. They weren't going to go and score from the free kick that he gave away. And then 4 minutes later, he grabs Theo by the shoulders, and it's going to be a red card. It's straightforward. And that's the 7th this year for Arsenal. And the 3rd in 5 games when they know they've got to watch themselves. It was just a mess again. Senior players not being responsible in the way they need to be responsible, which is getting on the ball, doing something with the ball, and not being funny. You talk about reputations. Arsenal should beat Southampton at home. Regardless of how well Southampton are playing, that's they've not lost there since 1987 at home to Southampton, and they came within a whisker of it last night, and that's where they are at the moment. Let's not beat around the bush. The problem they've got, though, it's more than one man. It's not Arteta's not the problem. It's a wider problem than that. So if you start pointing fingers at the manager, you think, well, what manager is going to come and sort this out quickly? I think he has to be given time, but he has got a mountain of work to do.
Yeah. What's the wider problem, Andy?
Well, the wider problem is probably the same that any club. It's a build-up of poor recruitment. You can always look at a club's transfer policy, and you can look at the amount of money they spent on, say, a Pepe. Is it really wise to give someone like a Willian a 3-year contract at his age? I don't ever agree with a Big Six club taking another player who has surplus requirements, another Big Six club. Is that wise? I think, in terms of recruitment, I can't see any joined up thinking in their recent recruitment over the last couple of years. Arteta was a gamble as a manager. He's essentially, it's his first big job. He's learning on the job. And it's a combination of all those things, John, I think. It just happens sometimes. There's just a sort of perfect storm that leads to a spell when a team is struggling. And, sometimes there can be an overreaction. I think their last victory I was at was at Old Trafford, and they were well organised. I actually saw them win at Wolves in lockdown. Would that have been towards the end of last season?
Yeah.
They all blurred into one when they won 2-0, and they were incredibly well organised, incredibly well disciplined, which I thought was the sort of starting point for Arteta to get them organised, to get them disciplined. And he has, but then the creativity has just gone. There is no spark there. There's no player there you look at and you think, I'm not going to go down the Ozil route, but there is no player you look at and think, who's going to pick out those chances? Who's going to create those chances? There doesn't seem a balance to the forward line. I'd probably like to see Aubameyang play, in a sort of Liverpool way where you have those fluid front three who can, crisscross. And it's just, he's just got an awful lot of work to do. It is literally a build-up of mistakes in the transfer market, mistakes in giving contracts to players. It's just basically now they're going to have to fight against that. They'll be good. I mean, it sounds a ridiculous thing to say, but they'll be good enough to stay up. But they are some way off Big Six, aren't they? They are Big Six only in size of stadium.
Don't put up my expectations too much.
Exactly. And it's right, isn't it? The words you thought you'd never say. But listen, I remember. Listen, good teams have gone down. I mean, do you remember the West Ham team that went down with the likes of Joe Cole?
Michael Carrick.
Michael Carrick in the early 2000s. So they are. Let's face it. They're already in a fight. They can already pretty much think. Pretensions of competing with the two teams that me and you watched last night at Anfield are some way off.
Crossy, what you obviously know quite a lot of people at Arsenal. What's the problem and what needs to change? Do you think?
How long you got, really? I mean, listen, I do. First and foremost, I think they really need to stick with Arteta. I think that whether or not he's the right man or the wrong man, it was too soon or too much of a gamble. We need to discover that. I personally don't think they'll be going down. So I think that now we need to find out whether or not he's going to have a wretched season. He gets to the summer and then clears out a dressing room, which I think is a major cause of this issue. How can it be healthy when you've got big names, big personalities who are being paid fortunes and not even in the squad to be available to play?
I mean, is Ozil actually? Is Ozil training? What is he even training with the squad or anything?
Ozil, he trains with the first team.
Right. So he's not in the map. He's not in the official squad, but he trains them.
Yeah,
that can't be healthy.
Cannot be healthy. Well, it's not healthy. Clearly, it's not healthy. It's not a good situation. Look, I personally still staggered that you've got a 25-man squad and you can't a team that is crying out for creativity. You can't find a place for Ozil. It's ridiculous. And then, look, I think some of the players are clearly disaffected and are fed up. I don't think they're necessarily fed up with the manager, but they're sort of pointing the finger at that player, this player. I don't think it's a particularly happy camp right now. I think that, some of the players are not effectively having each other. I don't think that, I think that the way that the players have responded, I think it shows that they're still with the manager. The manager can still, get some level of performance out of them. They fought back against Southampton. They actually played all right against Burnley, but, lost the game, and it's...
There's no identity.
Williams signing is the worst, I think, of the last summer window, bar none, in the Premier League. I think it's an absolute shocker, and they didn't even pay a penny for him. It's that bad. It's poor recruitment. It's what were they doing? Promoting Arteta from head coach to manager. Arteta clearly wanted that. He's a very ambitious, strong personality who would want more control and want a power grab. But there's got to be someone at the club on the board with football knowledge that goes, no, Mikel, you're doing great, thanks. You're going to be a brilliant coach. You're going to be a top-class manager. But we hired you as a head coach at a very early stage of your career, and you've won as the FA Cup. You overachieved last season. It's running along quite nicely, thank you. But what's that saying about Arteta? I think that says to me that Arteta wants to have more say on the transfer recruitment, on the academy, because
he's worked under Guardiola, hasn't he?
Yeah.
It's all about overall power and control. That's what Guardiola has at City. That's what he's always had. He's learned from him.
Absolutely. And listen, they've got good youngsters. Saka is an absolute
he's a good player.
Oh, God, what a player.
But there's no identity to the team, is there? When you watch him play, you think, what's the philosophy here?
Listen, for years, Arsenal fans, someone like me grew up in the 70s, 80s, would treat it to turgid, wretched football. It was awful. Even under sort of the periods of George Graham, who I think is an absolute god in managerial terms. The football was turgid at times, because he just ended up getting results, really. But that's great, that's fine. But, the Wenger era, say what you like about it, they were very creative, a good team to watch. And now that they're painful, it's like watching paint dry. And there are so many issues, but the one issue that they cannot get sucked into again is changing the manager. Give him until the end of the season. Let him, completely rebuild the dressing room. Because believe me, there's a lot out. Ozil, Mustafi, Socrates. They're all free transfers. It frees up a hell of a lot of money. They've got to then go and buy players that give them a structure, and you can see that's a first team. That's the first 11, and they have a pattern to their play. And they're
funny,
basically together.
When you look at Arsenal in their current predicament, there's quite a lot of comparisons with Man United in terms of they had a manager there for endless amount of years, had so much success. When Fergie left United, it was almost like knocking a house down and building a new one. They're on the 5th manager now since 2013. Arsenal, if you count Lundberg, I suppose, are on their 3rd manager since 2018, Wenger leave.
Yeah.
So you can't keep changing managers when things don't work out how you want them to. You've got to. It's like a whole fresh start for a club, isn't it? Because those Fergie and Wenger were just you can't replace those guys, and you've got to sometimes look at it and think, that might be as good as it's going to get for us. It might never be ever be as good as that again.
No,
you know what I mean? So we're two unique sort of managers in terms of how much success in the longevity.
I agree. I mean, I do think the problem is that one of the issues. And listen, I was on a Zoom call with Edu on Monday, and there's no doubt about it. I left that call thinking, right, they could lose the next 5 games, which they obviously haven't now, and they'll stick with him. Basically, they've got to stick with him. He was that resolute. Now, I think actually, Edu would be the first to admit on Monday that he was under pressure himself because of that poor transfer window. But Arsenal removed a lot of experience and a lot of, good people. And I'm talking, obviously, not just Wenger, but all of Wenger's staff. They've all gone. And it's just a lot of people to get through. Ivan Gazidis was a, incredibly well-connected guy in European football. Say what you like about him, and I know Arsenal fans do, but he did a lot of good things for the club as well. Dick Law, very good transfer operator on many levels, and again they sort of reshuffled the pack, haven't they? Raul Sanalai gone, Husfami gone. It's sweeping through the club, and it's like, hang on a minute, who is then on the board that's going to offer you the football insight? And you've got to support the manager as well. And I'm just a little bit concerned that they're sort of kind of making too many changes, thinking, we'll do the right thing. It's not going well. We'll change it again. They've got to be consistent with the structure. And,
We've got Everton, Chelsea up next. They're playing Everton and Chelsea next, and then Man City in the League Cup. So there's every chance it's going to get worse before it gets
I know. And, I have to say, if they'd lost last night, they'd be properly in the relegation battle, wouldn't they?
Well, they have to stick with Arteta now, because as of yesterday, the best man to keep them up is no longer available.
Oh, Big Sam. Yes, now we're going to come on to this. Now we must move on to West Brom because the clock is ticking. And so I also want, right, first and foremost, right, I want to get thoughts on Slaven Bilic. Slaven Bilic, right to sack him, right to bring in Big Sam. What do we think, guys?
I think you were right to sack him. I mean, look,
do you?
He's had 4 wins since February in the Premier League. They've not just sacked him.
Part of that is in the Champions, but
no, what I'm saying is that he's not won enough games. Now you could argue he's not been given enough money to spend. They got promoted, and Gucci and Lai, the owner, he's just not invested enough in a squad that clearly lacks the quality to compete in the Premier League. So, you've got to have some sympathy with Bilic, but, if they're going to stay up, I think they've acted at the right time. I mean, they've given Allardyce plenty of time to work his magic, but he needs to be given money to spend on players in January, I think. If they need 3 or 4 really good players to give them a fighting chance.
The squad's a championship squad.
Yeah.
I mean,
what's the point in going to all that trouble of winning promotion to the Premier League if you're not then going to spend the required amount of money to give yourself a good chance of competing? It just makes no sense whatsoever.
No, we're looking at the wrong target. I think Bilic has done a good job, got them up, and he needed support in the transfer.
But they handled the sacking poorly.
Terrible.
Really poorly. They've obviously leaked that story to the media before they've even told Bilic. He was sacked even before the game at City. I just think he deserves far more respect from a club in that.
Yeah, I think
because he has been a good manager for them. He's got them promoted. That's a great achievement.
And if you know Bilic as well, Bilic is a great guy.
Yeah.
And basically Art goes out to him. Blimey, I'll never forget the sort of hospitality. Were you there, Danny?
Yeah, I was, mate. You and your musical differences.
Let me indulge
at one point. I thought
really there was a wonderful English week when Arsenal were in the Champions League and Spurs were in the Europa League. Both had games in Istanbul in the good old days. One of the best cities in the world, bar none. By the way, fabulous city. And Arsenal on the Tuesday against Galatasaray, I think, and then Tottenham against Besiktas on the Thursday. Bilic was manager of Besiktas, and I managed to set up a sort of a sit down for a few of us in Bilic at the Besiktas training ground with Bilic. And Matt, I think
arrived with two guitars, didn't you?
And basically, Bilic was in great form, and I do like Slaven. I think he's a great fella. And basically, we'd been to a market, hadn't we? A sort of a thrift market or whatever in Istanbul. And
you dragged us around.
I bought a couple of guitars for my girls, mini guitars for my daughters. Basically,
hand luggage.
All got onto music, and I came out with the immortal words, "I'm very musical, Slaven."
Play us a tune, John.
I struggled to live that down ever since. But I do like Slaven. I think he's a good manager. I was delighted that he sort of kind of came back and was successful at West Ham, and then basically I also think he's done a very, very fine job at West Brom and deserves better. But Matt,
they weren't going to stay up.
My affection for Slaven is only surpassed by your affection, I fear, for Big Sam. And I think
I think.
Well, I don't know.
Now I'm rethinking it because his team couldn't pass either. But no, I mean, I can't believe that Allardyce has gone into that job without promises of something to spend in January, because he'll look at that squad, and he does before he does any of these rescue jobs, and looks at what there is there and decides whether or not he can make it, work to stay up. And I don't think even he'd look at that squad and say, I can do it with them.
£2 million bonus had nothing to do with it then, didn't it?
Well, I mean, he'd be tempted to take a chance maybe, and the longer you stay out, the longer
I noticed he's got a break clause if they do go down. So you're only backing yourself to a point. I thought that was an interesting one. That never normally happens with an Allardyce contract because he backs himself.
Yeah, of course he does.
I was interested in that, Matt. Do you think that even Big Sam is worried a little bit about this?
I think this is the big. I'll be honest, I haven't spoken to him the last 24 hours, but I reckon this is going to be the toughest challenge he's taking on, and he knows that.
Great. Yeah.
He's gone into other clubs that on paper are stronger and kept them up, but I think he would look at what West Brom have got and say that no, this is a bit dodgy, which is why there's no disrespect to Slaven Bilic for not keeping them up, because it's going to take next to a miracle, and probably some money in that transfer market, which is what ultimately is going to come down to. I mean, if anyone can do it, Allardyce is going to do it. It won't be pretty, we know that. Even I'll accept that. But he's done it before, and he's your go-to man, isn't he? Still, so. It does nothing more than organisation and shape and all the boring things, and eventually, grabbing enough points. I don't know if it'll take that many points this year, although Sheffield United is skewing things by picking up so few points. A point a game might be enough. But I can't believe this will be his best Red Air mission yet.
I have to say, there's sort of kind of the three promoted clubs have got it all to do, but Sheffield United's plight just, clearly Leeds would, I think Leeds are, over exceeding, doing extremely well. But I think that West Brom, just the lack of investment, Andy, the Championship side, and I mean, you look at their sort of kind of, they had Charlie Austin, I think, coming on the other night, so he's sort of kind of got Premier League experience. Kieran Gibbs got Premier League experience. Sam Johnston and obviously got, come from pedigree, but not really proven in the Premier League, although he's having an exceptional season, isn't he? It's frightening, I think, that squad, when you consider what a fine club West Brom is, and we're so used to them kind of, they're boing, aren't they? But in all sense, but I expected a bit more from West Brom this season, didn't you? In terms of backing for the manager. No,
not particularly. No, I mean, they're going down. They're going down the route of maybe not investing an awful lot of money. I mean, they're called boing for a reason. They might go down again. What's the worst thing that can happen? They can go down. They can be like Norwich City maybe and win a few football matches like Norwich City have done. They can be like Burnley and go down and get 93 points and win a few games and come back up. I mean, to me, I am like Matt, a fully paid up member of the Big Sam fan club. I've been for 30 years, both as a coach and as a bloke. But this is the most dispiriting and disheartening appointment that I've seen in the Premier League. And we've seen loads of these, haven't we? But for goodness sake, I mean, Bilic. Listen, I've seen West Brom give Chelsea a very good game. I've seen them be robbed of a point minimum at Old Trafford. We saw them get results in Manchester City. Listen, they've got a puncher's chance of staying up. They're playing some decent stuff. They've got a manager who has a great rapport with the fans. In these times, I thought the football might mean a bit more. To owners. There is a bit of escapism for supporters. Instead, it comes down to the financial equation that Matt's been talking about. Keep them up. They get a tranche of TV money. Sam gets a big bonus. Everyone's happy, apart from those who've got to watch the football. Maybe, I just do. And you mentioned Sheffield United. But if their ownership, and we can talk about that ownership at another stage, maybe, and the rights and wrongs of it. But if they're to be believed, they will stick with Chris Wilder regardless, and they will turn around in the same way that Burnley stuck with Sean Dyche, in the same way that Norwich City have stuck with Daniel Farke, and they'll say, well, you know what? Who's the best person to get us back out of the Championship? It was Daniel Farke who got them out of the Championship. It was Sean Dyche who got them out of Burnley out of the Championship. Who's to say that Bilic, who's done it once before, playing good football, wouldn't do it again? I just don't get it. And as I say, I am absolutely a card-carrying member of the Big Sam.
I know. I'm fascinated by that.
Is the dullest, most dismal appointment. I just don't get it.
Talk me through that, though. You're his mate, and you are his mate. You get on really well, and yet you are saying, I cannot believe.
I'm not saying he won't. I'm not saying he won't do a good job. He will, because he's pretty much done a good job everywhere he's gone. I'm not saying he's not a good coach. He is. He's a very underrated coach. And listen, I have to say, I have the utmost respect and for Sam. And listen, what happened? Bear in mind, I have the utmost respect for him coming back to manage after what happened to him with England. I genuinely think that you haven't got a heart if you don't sympathise with what happened to that man with England, to get your dream job and to have it taken away so abruptly by a guy, incidentally, in Greg Clark. It was transpired, we know what's happened there. And basically you haven't got a heart if you haven't got sympathy for Sam on that. And it's great to see him back. It's great to see him, and I hope he does really well. I'm on about the actual ethos of the appointments, the idea that they have to sack Slaven Bilic after a dozen games, 13 games, when, he's had a few decent results. They're 2 points from safety. He has a rapport with the fans. Just invest in something. Just listen to your fan base. To me, it is just a tried and trusted method. What are they going to do if after a dozen more games, they're still 2 points adrift from safety, and Sam hasn't actually worked his normal galvanising effect? What are they going to do? Drag Tony Pulis back? It is just, they're doing things. It's sort of by rote, by ticking these boxes and whatever. And it just, I don't know. I just thought, as I say, maybe idealistic. I just thought in these times when fans are looking, to get back to football for a bit of escapism, it just smacks of just tried and trusted pretty sort of like, mundane stuff really from West Brom. And, listen, I'll tell you what now, if you went to a neutral fan and you said, a couple of weeks ago, would you like to see West Brom and Slaven Bilic stay up? Well, they probably would have said, yeah. You say to them now, how much are you emotionally invested in West Brom and St. Allies staying up? I'm not sure anyone is that bothered, really. I think people will feel sorry for Bilic, and people would just see this as just another sort of, a very old-fashioned way of doing things.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. Jeremy, I just want to touch on, before we move on to our Christmas little featurette, I just want to touch on Man City, if I may. Because I looked at that game the other night and I was watching it on telly, and I'm thinking, I can't believe this about Man City. Man City, one of the best teams in the Premier League era, frankly, under Guardiola. Where I know we could have had this conversation at any point in the last, 8 months, year, whatever. But basically, what on earth's going to happen at Man City? Was it the right choice to give Pep Guardiola, who I have to say is an absolute genius in my eyes, a brilliant manager, but was it right to give him a new contract? Are they going in the right direction?
That's a tough question. I mean, look, Guardiola, we all know he's one of the greatest managers of all time. A lot of people think he is the greatest manager of all time. His record is remarkable. He's won so much for City. He's transformed the football they play. My one issue with it is Guardiola he's all encompassing in terms of his control, and everything has to be just done his way. He has a say on everything. He probably writes his own contract. It's just they've invested so much in him. He was the guy they always wanted, and they got him, and they've had loads of success. But everything comes to, you just feel like it's just slowly grinding towards the end. He's made some good signings. He's made some bad signings. They're 8 points adrift to Liverpool already. You just think they're probably not going to win the title this season. They're not. The ironic thing is he's resolved the defensive issues. I think they've conceded 1 goal in the last 7 or 8 games. So that was the problem last season. His problem now is they're not clinical enough in front of goal. Sterling's form's dipped a bit. His goal output's not as great. De Bruyne's playing okay, but not top of his game. Jesus is not the answer to Aguero. He's not a replacement for Aguero. Aguero's been out himself for 4 months. So, the issues he now has are at the front end of the book and not the back. So, it's almost like he's solving one problem and another's coming up. I mean, look, the Holy Grail is they're wanting to win the Champions League, and they've said to him, you can stay at this club for as long as you like. And Guardiola clearly is still invested in the club because it's the longest time he's ever spent in any of his jobs. So, it's a strange one, but I just get this feeling there's something's not quite right there. It's just gone a bit stale. They don't have that fear factor anymore, West Brom, Guardiola said himself, didn't he? These are the games, you've got to win these kind of games. And he's spot on, really, because that is just 2 points thrown down the pan, that. And they went ahead so early, and you thought, the day's gone by. That would have been 5-6-0, that, 7-0 even. And they've ended up being held to a 1-1 draw. So you just think something's clearly wrong here. Yeah. And that 8 points behind Liverpool already, that's, that is worrying.
Yeah, that was the thing that struck me. And as you rightly say, I think in previous days gone by, they would have treated it as a feast of football and blown the Oppo away. Guys, it's nearly Christmas. So I'm going to finish with a little Christmas featurette, please. 2-pronged question here. And I hope you've been creative in your thinking. I love these moments because it means that I don't have to be by posing the questions. Christmas. What do Premier League managers need for Christmas? And what's your best ever Christmas football related Christmas gift, guys? You can use a bit of journalistic license. I'm going to go around the room. Andy, you first, please.
Well, I didn't get the memo on this. What could Premier League managers do with it? It sounds like they could do it. According to Jurgen Klopp, it sounds like they could do with 5 subs for Christmas. Rather than the 5 days of Christmas or whatever, 5 subs are coming on for Christmas. However, having not brought a single one on last night, I think that argument is probably wearing thin, isn't it? Him and Guardiola, leaders of the campaign for 5 subs for Christmas, since they started that campaign, I think they barely brought a sub on between them. I mean,
you did have an England international, Oxlade-Chamberlain, on the bench as well, by the way.
Naby Keita, Oxlade-Chamberlain, but don't forget, John, it's all for the welfare of the players. No, when they're playing well and the team's doing okay, they'll keep them on. The 5 subs is for the egotistical indulgence of the manager, so he can, if they're not playing well, they can bring 4 or 5 on. So yes, so that would be maybe they can get that for a Christmas gift. The best best football related Christmas gift I've had. I don't know really. I'm trying to think.
Crew Alex shirt. Come on. Crew Alex shirt.
Well, funny enough, a lot of my stories are related to Crew Alex. I mean, around Christmas. I will tell you. I will tell you a story. I remember an ex-captain of Crew Alex, who shall remain nameless, was temporarily jettisoned by his wife over Christmas. A minor spat, and he came to stay in my house. And it was New Year's Eve, actually. On New Year's Eve, he had a game the next day. And he was staying at my house. And I was going out. I was working next day of the game, and I was going out to a party. And he said, I'll come with you. I said, you can't come with me. I said, you're playing tomorrow at New Year's Day. And he said, no, I'll come with you. I'll be okay. I said, no, you got it. Anyway, obviously he did, and he did. And he had a couple of drinks, and about midnight, I said to him, listen, we better get back. You're playing. I think it was a midday kickoff. I said, you're playing tomorrow. At which point he was at the top of the stairs, and he said, yes, I'm coming. And he tumbled down the stairs and broke his ankle. I had to take him to A&E, and he said to me, listen, he says, there's a bit of an issue, isn't there? I said, yeah, you are supposed to. He says, when you see the manager tomorrow, tell him me and you were out jogging. I said, come on. I said,
who's going to buy that?
Exactly, mate. So I go into the manager the next morning. He said, what happened to, I won't mention his name, so I said, well, me and him, we were out for a run. And he looks at me.
New Year's Eve.
He looks at me on New Year's Day, blurry-eyed, and sort of carrying a bit. And he just laughed me out of course, as you would. So, yes, I've got many.
Did you do the story?
Yeah. So yeah, many happy festive times then. But do you remember? I mean, again, going back all those years, it's funny when you started. Talk about the difference now in terms of what we do now in terms of relationships with clubs with players. I remember going to Christmas parties with players. You know, the players' Christmas parties. Remember them? Remember this time of year when we would have the play. I mean, Liverpool, for example, where me and you were last night, John. Their Christmas parties were legendary, absolutely legendary. And you would get pictures of them all going out in fancy dress, wandering up and down Bold Street in Liverpool, you know, pub crawling. Can you imagine that now? I mean, can you imagine that now? You know, they get upbraided if they say a wrong word on social media. Never mind if they're having a pub crawl, like, you know, dressed in fancy dress.
Fantastic. I love it. Matt, come on.
Right, well, in a similar spirit of Andy's Christmas present, I didn't get a player for Christmas. I did get it was Christmas Eve actually, but probably the best Christmas present I got was a phone call from a former Premier League manager calling me the filthiest word in the English language on Christmas Eve. With all my family, I took the call. Oh, it's this person, and obviously the family around quite impressed that this guy's ringing you up.
David O'Leary.
To call me. I'm not saying who it was.
I'm guaranteed.
I'm not saying who it was, but that was very much a Christmas surprise. And what I would wish managers back for Christmas themselves generally is probably better owners, because I'm sure they could all, or most of them could do with that, because as my old mate Neil Warnock says, it's all about managing up as opposed to managing down these days. So if 2021, like Slaven Bilic is probably feeling at the minute, they could have better owners, then that's what I'd wish for them for this Christmas.
Very good. Jezza?
Managers, yeah. They want as many points as possible, but more importantly, probably at this time of year, they want as few injuries as possible because it's such a crazy spell. So that's that. Dunny has blown us all out of the water there with his player anecdote, broken ankle story. But a few years ago, I remember going to Man United for a pre-Christmas. It might have been pre-Boxing. I don't know. Before Christmas, 2 days before Christmas, Louis van Gaal had a press conference, and it all started really well because there was like crackers on the table and mince pies and mulled wine at 9:30 in the morning. I mean, can't think of anyone. Well, I can think of one German who probably would have had a bit. But anyway,
I don't know who.
So we're all gathered around. There's loads of bonhomie and everything, and everything's all hunky dory. And then by the end of the press conference, Van Gaal had got into such a state of anger with us all over some line of questioning that he stormed out of the room. Basically said, "Enjoy your effing mince pies and free wine." Just basically berated us with this outburst of expletives, and that was it. Happy Christmas, mate. Cheers, Louis. See you later.
Love it.
Yeah, it was
love it. Love the stories, guys. No, thanks so much for joining. And listen, also happy Christmas to everyone that's watching as we build up to the big day next week. But guys, thanks so much. Really, really big, significant week. We didn't even have a chance to even look at Man United Leeds this weekend, did we? Which I have to say, what an absolute cracker that is. What a throwback fixture. Fantastic. So there's plenty to look forward to. Guys, Andy, Jeremy, Matt, fantastic. Really enjoyed it. Thanks so much, everyone, for watching and listening. Really appreciate it. And thanks for tuning in. Please tune in again soon. Thank you.